Okay, everybody, welcome to another Nova Scribes. I am super excited to work with my friend and colleague Hile Rutledge. So Hile is what best title for OKA? CEO, president,
I'm
czar,
the president and
overlord,
principal consultant.
president and principal consultant. So can you tell Nova Scribes a little bit about what OK is and what y'all do?
Yes, thank you, Brian, for having me as part of this conversation. OKA is a consulting and training firm in Fairfax, Virginia, and we're focused in on leadership and team development. Our niche, we've been around since 1977, and our niche is really using tools, using psychological assessments. We were founded around the Myers Briggs, but now we train on a dozen different tools. We're kind of tool agnostic, but how to translate that tool into the now what, so what? How do you use this? How do you understand it? How do you juice this piece of fruit without overdoing it, and applying it so that you can show up on Wednesday doing something you didn't do Tuesday? And that's kind of what we focus in on. And while we use many tools, we were founded around the Myers Briggs. It was my first love, and so I really look forward to talking to you about two things I really love: the Myers Briggs and Star Trek. So
Yeah, so thanks for the introduction. So a little bit of background. Hyle and I were talking as we do, and we were geeking out over the finer points of the Myers Briggs. And somehow we got into this conversation around Star Trek, and we did one of these, things. And so we thought it was so much fun that we would kind of see where the overlap of the Venn diagram was, and we would
yeah.
talk about Star Trek in the context of the Myers-Briggs and type theory and everything that goes along with it. By the way, Kyle, thank you for helping me get my master certification in the Myers-Briggs.
Oh,
That's been huge.
yeah.
It's actually brought in some work. So thank you very
Oh,
much for
great.
supporting and mentoring me through that whole process.
I appreciate that.
Um, yeah, so where do we start? I mean, maybe we talk through some of the characters. You sent a PowerPoint deck. We could take a look at that. Uh,
Sure.
the thing to me, I mean, if I could just kind of frame it a little bit,
Hmm.
the thing to me that's always been fascinating about Star Trek is that unlike a lot of the other sci-fi shows that are out there, right? It really is about the human dynamic that's there.
Hmm.
I mean, you really wouldn't have a show if it wasn't for the characters and the people that are involved. I think a lot of other shows like kind of they double down on like the techno babble or the action and the stuff like that. And Star Trek certainly has that. But I think fundamentally it's a human drama. It's about the interactions between the types and the people that are there. Would you agree with that?
Well, I totally agree with that. In fact, that one of the things that I think gives it there are a couple of things that really give it its uniqueness, and that since it came from the mind of Gene Roddenberry, the creator of the show. uh, he was a very heady guy, and he was into Jung. He knew about Jung. He was introduced to Jung through Joseph Campbell. So the DNA of the show is rooted in very Jung friendly things, even though it wasn't overt. It makes sense that it keeps showing up, and that some of these Jungian core ideas keep appearing and reappearing, which I love. And also another thing that I think is really that makes Star Trek unique among all shows, and especially science fiction stuff, is at its core, it's about human development. It has a positive view of the future. We have conflicts, and we've had conflicts, and we overcame a lot of things, but the story is arcing towards something positive, towards an embrace of diversity, towards better communication, towards more realized humanity, even though humanity is one speck among all these races and things out in the world. And so it has such a positive
Hmm.
view of the future. And the um and so that that is uh, and that development idea, I think, is makes it so rich and so
Yeah. And just
inspiring.
to connect the dots for some of the folks that might not know that the work Psychological Types, that book by Carl Gustav Jung, that is the foundation of the Myers-Briggs. It was from that we have the Myers-Briggs type indicator that came from that. I did not know that Gene Roddenberry was steeped in Jung's philosophy, really. How now that I think of it, it's like, yeah, sure, there's like the alternate universe and all of that stuff. How do you see it show up?
Well, the first thing that struck me, because I like the original series, Kirk
Hmm.
and Spock, and Uh, it launched actually the year I was born, but I didn't see any of that. I mean, I saw it in reruns, but it was the next generation that really sparked me, where I became a fan, where I had to see it all the time. And the first thing that struck me was was Picard, the Captain Picard, whom I loved. But on the bridge of the Enterprise, as you watched it, you had Riker, his second in command, a thinker, on his left, and Counselor Troy, the ship's counselor, an empath, a feeling decider on the Myers Briggs, was on his right. And so that the TF judgment line was played right there. And Captain Picard, who himself was a T, is sitting in the middle, but he doesn't make a decision without both of these coming in. He integrates both of those. And it was just so physically manifest on the bridge with every command decision. And that was such an honoring of feeling, in a way that typically militaristic or
Hmm.
command hierarchies, didn't honor F. F was other. And so to pull it in that meaningfully was a big deal, especially in the 80s.
Yeah, that's amazing. I never really thought of it that way. There was this one episode in particular, which is it's like in my top five. It's the one where Riker thinks he's losing his mind.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember that one?
Yes, I do.
And
Yeah.
he's going like in and out, like is he in this insane asylum, or is he on the bridge, the Enterprise or whatever. And there's this scene at the end where it's getting close to the end, and in this like kind of pseudo therapy, these different aspects of his persona show up in the room, and you've got Worf, who is like action minded, and you've got let's see, who else did you have? uh I think Troy was there too,
Troy was
right?
there.
For
Troy
feeling.
was there. Yeah.
And then like Picard was the bridge between the two of them, like trying to bring
Yeah.
the more like action with the more feeling side of things.
Thoughtful, pensive. Yeah.
Yeah.
That, yeah, that was one of the things. So a cousin of that
Hmm.
was the one. It was a two-part episode called "The Chain of Command." This was back
Yes.
like in
Hmm.
six, and Picard is captured. He's a prisoner of war. It's one of the best pieces of TV I've ever seen. And he's really just stripped down. I mean, not only literally
Literally.
stripped of his
Mhm.
clothes, but I mean, but stripped down, torn down, and and the and so we get to see him go through this traumatic kind of event, and he comes through, and there's a lot of action, and so there's a lot going on. But in the end, here, this strong, stalwart commanding officer comes back, and he regains his captain's chair and all of that stuff. But um but the end of the two-part episode, he goes in, and we get to a little portal into his process, and he sits with Counselor Troy, and he just opens up
Yes.
and has to process what's happened to me. And we don't see that part. We often don't see the strong, tough guy lead. They win in the end, and of course that happens. But then I have to process this trauma that I'll carry with me always, and how do I integrate that into? That's now a part of me. How do I do that? And we got to see how a strong, tough, commanding leader has to do the personal work.
Hmm.
You just didn't see that on.
Right.
And anyway, and so that the idea, your idea with Riker was just how we work for integration, how we work for bridging the tensions and holding the tensions that we have, and the show just does that beautifully.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Cool. I've got your PowerPoint deck. I'm happy to show it off if you want to. Do you want to take a look at it?
sure.
All right, cool. So I noticed that you were going through and typing some of the characters. You want to talk through this a little bit?
Yeah, well, so I like to. I'm less interested, frankly, in so I don't mind it, but in terms of what's the four-letter type of a character, because they don't
Sure.
always have tight four-letter types, or at least I don't know what they are.
Hmm.
The show being the show, sometimes a story or a different writer will make you as a character do something that fits the narrative but doesn't fit the character. Anyway, so the ones I have on here are things that I think that type drives some of the character. I mean, so
Mhm.
that I think it's kind of, and Captain Kirk and in the original series, Dr. McCoy, their extroversion is part of that, that they show up, that
Right.
they talk, that they emote, that they engage outwardly is part of that. Same with Riker, Dr. Crusher, and the Next Generation. Q, who is
Yeah.
a vital character, only shows up a couple times a season, but he shakes things up so dramatically and so pivotally, uh, that and he's clearly an extroverted
Yeah.
character. And so these are the ones, and I have some Voyager, which I really liked.
Mhm.
Deep Space Nine, which I'm trying to really like. I like it fine, but I'm trying to love it, and I haven't gotten there yet. But the anyway, so these feel like real extroverted characters to me.
I will tell you, you could check this out on Netflix. There's actually a retrospective that the actors from Deep Space Nine did, reflecting on Deep Space Nine. That, like, really for me, it boosted the level of what DS9 was trying to do and what it was all about. So
Oh, was
you might
I
check it
like
out.
the it I appreciate it.
Mhm.
I'm I just haven't found the doorway into loving it yet. But I
Yeah,
will definitely check that out. The
yeah. It
one
was
thing I
almost
like
like,
about Voyager is
mhm.
that most of the shows, most of the iterations of Star Trek are very P. As in they just go around and they discover stuff and oh that's interesting and oh squirrel and I mean that's kind of what the shows are all about. Voyager is the only one that actually has a mission. We're trying to get home. I mean
Yes.
they're blasted on the other side of the galaxy from something, and then for 7 years they're trying to get back home,
Mhm.
and so it actually is the only one with a focus, and and so that makes it unique among all
Yeah.
those shows, I think.
Yeah,
But
it's the journey that they're on, right? It's like
yeah,
it's not, you could watch the episodes out of order, but it's not like trying to do this big series, but it's still episodic, but there's a quest there,
yeah.
right? Which is a
Yeah, and so that makes it kind of interesting and compelling to
so
me. But the introversion
yes.
ones that that Spock is clearly an introvert,
Hmm.
and that's so much of the drama is the extroversion of Kirk and Spock and the introversion, I mean, of Kirk and McCoy and the introversion of Spock, and the tension between outward and inward is one of the things, is one of the tensions they play on.
Okay, I want to pick at you just a little bit, all
Yeah.
right?
Go ahead.
I completely agree with all of these except Counselor Troy, right?
You
Because
think she's an
she's
ENFP or?
I kind of picked her up as an ENFP, right? But so help me out. I mean, look. If you say she's an introvert, she's an introvert.
No, no, no.
Now walk me through this one though. Help me out with that because she's so out there with her feelings, right? I mean, that's not going on inside. Like she's expressing.
Well, so the idea, and so if we're geeking out,
We're
which you said
geeking
this
out.
was so I'm going to hold you to your word, and we're geeking out here. The that the I think she's an I, and I think she's an INFP, and so the thing about INFP is that she has this inward sense of values of right and wrong, and she's out in the world, but she's out in the world with her intuition, and so she goes to a meeting and she's sensing this and that, and so she's, as this empath, she's out in the world getting vibes. That's that external. Now ENFPs do that too, uh,
Mhm.
but they're guided by this inner. Yes, I think this is. It's actually she's the ultimate in Rogerian therapy. So Carl Rogers, and it was very very strict in this inner focus of you do not give guidance. You do not say anything. You hold these things inwardly, and all you do is ask questions and to guide that in. And so it's the ultimate kind of counselor model: inwardly
Mhm.
closed, outwardly curious and open. And the and I think she is frequently doing that. She
Yeah.
in the background, she holds back. She watches and then puts in. She never offers, she never pushes anything. She waits until she's asked in good counselor mode. She's frequently in 10 forward by herself eating
Yep.
chocolate ice cream.
Eating
Uh,
chocolate.
the- and so she seems, that seems more introverted to me. There's an argument for extroversion, but she's frequently in the background.
Well, if I remember properly, you're also an INFP yourself, right? So it's kind of one of these takes one to know one.
Well, yeah, I mean, so I think you could make an argument for INFP, but yes, I'm an INFP, and she seems that's another point of connection with Riker, with whom she has this very
Yes.
important, and she's the yin to his yang almost completely, I think.
Right. Okay. All right. Yeah. All the rest of these, I totally see that. All right. Let's do this one's always hard for me. The sensing intuition one.
It's the least relevant to most of the stories, I think. I mean,
Hmm.
there's tension and drama in the EI split and TF split for sure.
Yeah.
That's a major theme throughout the whole thing.
That
SEN
one's
is
easy. Right.
less juicy, I think.
Hmm.
But uh and so Spock and McCoy, I think, are both sensors. Scotty, classic engineer. I think all
Very
the
literal, very tactical, very like
um,
into the details of things. Yep.
O'Brien, LaForge, I think they all are, and I think that's more on what they do.
Yep.
I think what they do is the sign of that, not anything they necessarily say.
Hmm.
Uh, the but One interesting thing here, though, on Spock, and this is not just around sensing, but Spock is, if you had to boil everything in Star Trek down to one character that symbolized it, it would probably be Spock. I mean, maybe
Yeah.
Kirk, the um, but Spock is such an interesting type character because while he presents himself, I think consistently as this ISTJ kind of character, it's all repressed.
Hmm.
As a Vulcan, the whole point is you need to gain outer control and make yourself, even if you are um, a round peg, you need to put yourself in this square, hole, and that's the uh, and so the question is he a T, which we'll get to in a minute, which I mean, he certainly presents himself that way. But the whole Vulcan thing is, no, you need to be that. Even if you
Right.
aren't, you need to be that. So it's hard to, within the construct of Vulcanness, I mean, it's just
Yes.
this fictional thing, what is put on and what is real when repression is such a core practice. It's interesting thought. Um,
That's interesting. So let's explore that a little bit. Do you think now this isn't Myers-Briggs language, but there's other assessments out there that you and I are familiar with that talk about natural type and adapted type,
yeah.
right? So do you think that the sum of that is adapted in Spock's case?
Well, that he's so consistently, the only times he doesn't present himself as ISTJ through the books, through the movies, through the shows, um, is um, is when he's being messed with in some way, and
Right.
he comes out as more expressive or emotional, and something's clearly wrong. I mean, there's even a disease he gets one time, and it comes out, uh, this extroverted F, because he's sick. I mean, and that's
Hmm.
I mean, so that so he's so consistently S, but ISTJ, that you would
Right.
think, well, then that's clearly his type. But the but he also is clearly so working so hard
Hmm.
to maintain this. It's just hard to it's hard to say. I mean, so the consistency of it over the arc of his, fictional life makes it seem like that's who he is.
Yeah.
But it's just hard with the construct of this Vulcan, because repression is such a core tenet.
Right. And that's the socially desirable, the ISTJ ideal in Vulcan society.
So it's hard to say. I mean,
Yeah.
and so so that's interesting. We haven't a similar thing, because notice what isn't on here is Data.
Yeah.
Um, and because I don't know, because Data's a fascinating character,
Hmm.
but I don't know. I could make an argument that he is ISTJ. I could also make an argument that he's INTP. That
Yep.
So the T seems clear, and the
Yep.
introversion seems clear to me, but nothing else does, because but again, he's a computer. I mean, literally, he's an android, and so I don't know that S and N are relevant
hmm
to that.
Yeah.
The
Plus, him being an introvert, he would be tough to read anyway, right? It's always a little bit more difficult.
Yeah, I mean, so where would you put Data? I don't have him anywhere here
I mean,
on
my intuitive self would say that, well, he's a censor, because it's the very literal, not getting jokes, into the details. He's the analyst character. He's the one that's always like diving into the weeds to like figure things out, right?
Yeah,
He's the one who's like, Data, read these 300 years of, law to figure out whatever the precedent is, stuff like
yeah,
that.
in a second.
In a
And
second. So he's
yeah,
he's the one. So that's my but he's okay, so here's the other thing. He's also experiments with like painting,
yeah,
right? And creativity and and that stuff. And I'm wondering if that's like, he's exploring facets of his humanity. Maybe that's him, reaching into his tertiary function. If he's reaching into another function that's not, out there, that's his more of what his actual identity is. Maybe you could square something for me. Slight leaving Star Trek just a little bit. The shorthand that I tend to use to think of sensing and intuition is that sensing is about the detail side of things, right? It's really kind of like diving into the weeds. It's the literal, it's the actual, it's what's concrete, it's what's real, right?
mhm,
Whereas the intuitive is more about the big picture and the what if and the imagination and patterns and trends and things that are not so much seen as they are, well, intuited.
yeah,
They're like with your mind's eye rather than your physical eye, right?
yes,
Okay, so there's another aspect to the sensing and intuition that it's out there in the literature. I haven't quite been able to square it. You do a great job doing it when you talk about like taste the raisin or taste the Skittle, I think was the way that you taught it to me, which is that the sensing is really about having that concrete sensing experience of things, right?
hmm,
Um, so walk me through, just because we've got the slide up, having that aspect of sensing, like having that hands-on, you
yeah.
know, experience of things. How does that square with some of the folks that you've got on the slide here?
Well, so one of the things that where you really see that hands-on, it's the taste the Skittle idea,
Yeah,
but it's not about tasting, but it's about hands-on. It's about the experience of now. Everybody in engineering, from LaForge to O'Brien to Scotty, and it's thrive most when I got to get my hands on that engine and give them warp speed, or we're all dead. It's that
yeah.
kind of and you can't plan for it. It's about being in this present tactile moment, which is then replaced by this present tactile moment. And it's not theoretical, and it's not planned, it's not procedural. It's about right now, and what can I
hmm
do right now to get this thing to work. And that's that kind of hands-on experience of things. And that's the and so it's physical, it's immediate, it's reactive, and that's sensing. That's extroverted sensing. It's SP if you're into temperament. That's what SP means. But but it's extroverted and it's sensing. And the or that function, that brain function, is
Right.
extroverted sensing. And and I think all of the engineers are that.
Yeah.
And I think, and that makes sense, because they're engineers, but they're not, but they're engineers that have to um, be on the fly,
hmm
and do it in the moment. And if you can't do it and do it quickly and cleverly right now, we're all dead. And
Yeah.
that it draws that kind of immediacy to
I
it.
got you. Yeah, and you said the SP temperament, which is like those are
Yeah.
our first responders, our, repairmen who show up at a moment's notice, right? The
And in fact,
emergency room.
I think you can make an argument that Kirk, if it's not Spock as the
Yeah.
most famous, as the face of the franchise, it's Kirk. And And I think Kirk could very well be that. He might be an ENFP, but
Hmm.
I think you can make a really good argument he is an ESFP. Uh,
Yeah, I kind of pick him up as an ESFP too for
that
that.
he,
Like,
that it, that it's because there's no plan, there's no procedure. He's insubordinate all the time, but he's so charming. He
hmm.
gets away with it, and he just in the moment he's going to react and do, which is the tension he has with Spock, who's always this locked down, proceduralized down the middle, and so that's the I mean, that's the tension there, but it's that same engineering kind of fly by the seat of your pants and react in the moment that I think makes him attractive to the people who think he's attractive.
Right. And just because you brought up Jung before, like this is getting into like, deep stuff, but the whole in psychological types where he talks about, the tension between the Apollo and Dionysus, right? I think that's what you're talking about right here. It's like that free spirit, fly by the seat of your pants versus the rigid lockdown structure. Would you?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And part of the because uh there's such an attractiveness, or there can be, to this person, that because he's also very much he's very passionate. He's not only with other humans, but just passionately cares about whatever he's doing, and it connects to it. And there's such a life force that comes with that. And that's P, but it's SP, especially when you add that subjective values orientation of the
Right.
S, that SFP, and that so when you talk about the Dionysian
Hmm.
almost archetype, the that's he gets at that.
He gets at that.
And one of the things, because the pilot of Star Trek way back in
Oh yeah, the cage,
1965 or
right? Mhm.
1966, or was the original Captain Pike,
Captain
was
Pike.
actually this lockdown. I mean, it's fine, but it was kind of boring and drab and
Hmm.
inwardly focused and super serious, sad bastard kind of a person going through. And it wasn't a very successful pilot, and they needed somebody to kind of zip this up and be a little more. Uh, Kirk this thing up a little bit more, and so that's
Hmm.
so dramatically that's what they needed. But they brought in some real interesting they flipped some interesting type levers to get that effect.
Hmm. Yeah.
It
And
worked.
by the way, you shared with me that you're not quite as up on the more recent series that are out there, but you'll be happy to know that Pike got a makeover with Strange
Oh
New Worlds,
yeah,
and he's
and
real good in it.
I have watched that one.
Have you?
Discovery is the one that I haven't gotten into yet.
Hmm.
And that the one that's just ending or just ended, and I haven't seen Below Decks, which you mentioned I should. So I will.
Lower decks. Below
Oh,
decks
Lower Decks,
is
Lower Decks.
about cruise ships, I think. Yeah, but yeah, you'll if you Google it, you'll get there.
Yeah,
Um, I won't give it away. There's some amazing stuff that happens in this
I
series.
look
You'll
forward
dig
to
it.
it.
It's of the. I was about to say it's my favorite, but really Lower Decks is my favorite of the new ones that's out there. Okay,
Wow. Okay. All
so
right. Yeah.
my J is itching a little bit, so we've
Good.
got let's round this out with the ends. So you got nobody in the ends for the original series, huh?
Well, so my thought is, I don't think they do much with character development
Yeah,
other than Spock, McCoy, and Kirk in the original. I mean, there's
right,
some in the side, but it's hard to tell. I mean, because there really are bit players most of the time.
right,
I don't
right.
have a good handle on those, but the next generation Captain Picard, I think, is clearly introverted, intuitive. Uh, Troy, I think, is
Yep,
so ENFP, INFP, but she's an N for sure. I think Dr. Crusher is,
yep,
and Q, again,
definitely.
small but pivotal kind of role, is always stirring things up. I think Cisco, the commander of Deep Space Nine, I think is INFJ. I think he's certainly an N, and the in a whole system of sensors. And so he's really kind of holds that down a bit, and even
Hmm.
winds up in this kind of exalted spiritual place
Right,
somewhat
right.
because of that. Um, and Janeway, I think, is Neelix, is Kess
Yep.
from Voyager. I think so. That's at least how I saw it.
But let's
Would you
take a
push
minute on
against
Q
that?
just for a second, right? Because he's such a fascinating character. I kind of read him as an ENTP. What do you think?
ENTP. Oh, I think so. I
All
think
right. Okay.
ENTP. Yep. Um, and the so extroverted, always talking, wildly inventive and creative, disruptive, but he likes to even disrupt to see what happens.
Hmm.
Well, how are you going to get out of this one? Even though I've just threatened your life. Oh, that's interesting. What can we learn from that?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and the a loose cannon, brilliant, obnoxious, funny, all I mean, all and so I think and all of those things easily fit in that ENTP uh, 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 file, I think.
Amazing. All right. Let's keep going. How about okay, so T Spock. Clear
Here's
like
where
you
the juice is. I
okay.
mean, I think TNF is where the
Yeah.
most play is, and um, and I think it's as we see the T and F that Spock's holding down that objective analytical, whether it's him or his put on, it doesn't matter. It's so consistently done. That's his base. That's his lane. Um,
Hmm.
Picard, I think, is the T
Yep.
commanders. They're so well integrated, and part of the Star Trek characters always kind of feel most of the time like they're on their best behavior because they're so
Right.
well developed. It's another view of this nice future to which we're arcing kind of thing. Um, Data, I think, clearly is a T, but he's trying. He even has a switch that he can flip
Right.
to go F, but he's got to decide to do that. His natural default is objectivity. It's a beautiful
Hmm.
construct. And I wish I had a switch like that to turn the F off. It would be nice.
I'll make you one. I actually use this to teach the Myers-Briggs,
Oh yeah.
because what does it tell us? It tells us our default settings, right?
Oh yeah.
But
That's
these
nice.
are momentary switches. And what a momentary switch is sort of like the ignition on your car. You have to hold it. If you let go, it snaps back. It takes
Oh,
energy. I've got a lot of leverage out of these things. I'll make you one.
I love that. I've
Yeah.
never seen that. That's brilliant. I love that, Brian. That's really
Cool.
smart.
Because that's what the Myers-Briggs tell you, right? It gives
Yeah.
you your default settings. You have to choose to throw that switch. And when you do, it costs you energy. Okay. I'll make you one.
Oh, I like that. I like that. Um, but anyway, Worf and Q, I think
Yeah.
clearly tease. The in the Deep Space Nine, if you're into that, yeah, I think
Yeah.
Janeway, Tuvok, another Vulcan, so same, even more locked down than Spock. Um,
Hmm.
Seven of Nine, the is a great character. She'll come up later in our discussion, I think. But the Doctor who is another great character, a hologram. So that basically the computer program
Right.
that is so yeah. Those are. Would
So,
you dicker with any
well,
of those or push
yeah,
back?
just what's interesting about this is that contrasting where this is going, right? Just being able to see who's not on this list is that you've got the original series, you got Spock. He's the, token thinker, person who prefers thinking. That's the language
Yeah.
I'm supposed to use now. And then if you look at the next generation, you've got, I mean, the token person who prefers feeling is going to be, Troy. There's maybe a couple of other ones that are sprinkled in there. Guinan, I guess you could throw her on there, but she doesn't really have a
Oh,
big
good.
role.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great.
But if you look at like the command structure,
Yeah.
it's like totally flipped.
Yeah.
I would not have put that together until you represented it this way. I wonder if okay, so here's my intuitive self kicking in. I wonder what that means.
What do you think it means? What would you guess?
I wonder if it was a reaction to the design of the original series versus the next generation and kind of like the philosophy of it. Like for example, with next generation, you have, the idea of the prime directive. We don't interfere with other civilizations less evolved than ours. In the original series, that was like every episode, and they were doing that. Like, did not show up at all. So I wonder if it was more of like world building almost, to say that the Enterprise is part of Starfleet, is part of a much larger, a federation that's out there. I mean, you got glimpses of that with the original series, but you really saw it kind of played out, I think, in the next generation. I wonder if it was like a part of like trying to ascribe to the values.
Yeah, the thought was when Star Trek first went out, the big push was, can we get this show on and can we get it to stay on? Because
Mm,
keep threatening to cancel it each one of the 3 years it was on,
right.
um, and so I think so let's play out tension between, and Spock was a breakaway hit. It was supposed to be William Shatner's show, and
Hmm.
the popularity of Spock actually took everybody by surprise. He was the one that was nominated for Emmys. He was the one that was, I mean, so it was a big shock. And so I think they were playing at, they just started playing on that tension, and it was about the extroversion, introversion. It was about the action, passion versus the staid, thoughtful, stalwart kind of. And so they kept playing on that tension back and forth. I
Hmm.
think they put more thought into the next generation. That was actually what Roddenberry wanted to create in the
Mm.
first place, was something that was a little more complex and a little more thoughtful. Um, and the and so when they, I think a lot of the tensions that came out of the original series, it was good writing, but I think those were not, they weren't so much planned. They were, that was a little more organic. I think this one was the one that played it out intentionally. Um,
Mm.
and and I think the one of the bigger issues, while I think the TF split is good, I think the drama around extroversion introversion is
Hmm.
fun sometimes. I think that the decision making on, whether it was around TF nominally or not, I think it was about, objectivity and being thoughtful, sensitive, and needing both of those to make a good decision. I think that was overtly attempted. Um,
Yes.
Even if they weren't thinking about Myers Briggs, but I think they were thinking about psychological type. Um,
Hmm.
the But I think the big thing that comes up later, I don't know if you want to
Sure. Yeah. Let's jump
skip
ahead.
ahead, but is there was a is the first, so slide 9 is the themes uh, of of humanity, and the and so that, one of these things of around, thinking and feeling and interdependence, I think, has been there from the start. So Kirk bouncing off of Spock, and the and also, using Spock and McCoy. Kirk often used the tension between, McCoy and Spock to cut a line between them, and that's a junior version of what Picard will do
Hmm.
between Riker and Troy. And then Picard, of course, sitting on the deck and sitting on the bridge and deciding between the two is just a beautiful tension there. And the Janeway, once we get to Voyager,
Yes.
I think is a strong female lead, and the tension she has, even though she still does play Chakotay, her second in command, who's an F, and Tuvok, her longtime friend and companion, who's a T, and she'll, you know, seek both of their counsels before. So the same thing is happening, but the tension is within Janeway, which is fascinating because I think she's a T. I think she's an INTJ,
Hmm.
same type that Picard is. But as a woman, she is socialized to F. 2/3 of women about are feeling, and so you are raised, whether you like it or not, to be socialized in that direction, and that most TJ females have their sharp corners filed down the way TJ men tend not to. Um, and the It doesn't have to be that way, but it often is. And she is, I think, that way. So the tension she holds is within herself, of,
Yeah.
because, it's part of my maternal nature. It's part of my womanhood. It's part of the natural who I am. And I'm also this tea scientist, uh, engineer, explorer, and those things are play out as dramatic tensions all the time. And so
Yeah.
I just think that's a core Star Trek thing, and I love it.
Yeah.
Uh,
Me too. And
yeah.
I would totally agree with you on Janeway being a T. Do we need to talk about Tuvix? I mean, that's probably
Well,
played out.
actually, actually, if you go down to 10, just as the
Oh,
other,
you did? Okay.
slide 10. But so the one of my favorite parts about Star Trek as a show, and it plays into what we're talking about now,
Hmm.
but is what does it mean to be human? And so
Right.
the original series had Spock, and they almost tripped over it. I mean, it wasn't an original, hey, let's do this. It just emerged from the stories that, here's this, he's, um a mixed race, the so he's half human, half, and so
Hmm.
there's this tension within him about, am I human or am I Vulcan, and what does that mean? And hear these feelings, but how do I use them, and how the so what who's in fact there's a from the movie the Wrath of Khan,
Oh yeah.
the movie that which is a I think a great movie, but the at Spock dies at the end of that. Spoiler alert, if tonight was the night you were going to go back and watch Wrath of Khan, so sorry about that. But the idea of and Kirk actually says as his eulogy that he was the most human um, person I've ever known,
Mhm.
and this person who's not human at all is part of the story. So anyway, it's just real interesting tension. And then the next generation, let's mine that vein again with Data, who is a machine yearning to be human.
Right.
And what does it mean to be human? And what do I need to amass and accrue to cross that line? And the um, and Worf, who's raised a Klingon raised by humans and in a human world, and what does that mean? Counselor Troy is half
Yeah.
Betazoid and half human, and then uh, uh, Q's an interesting
That's his
thought.
whole thing. He's always trying to figure out humanity. That's his whole thing.
And he torments them, but he's fascinated and by it, he can't leave it alone.
Mhm.
Um Odo is this
Yeah.
shapeshifter. He sleeps in a bucket, but he comes in and tries to. So we are. Dax is a fascinating
Yeah.
character where it's this little like cucumber kind of creature who takes over this symbiotic kind of relationship with somebody. And so are you the person I see, or are you the person that's are you
Yeah.
the puppet master inside, and who actually is hundreds of years old, but you're in the body of this beautiful young woman, and so so it plays around fascinating. Seven of Nine, the
Mhm.
doctor, just and so it keeps putting this. Well, so what does it mean to be human? And they're all trying. Shouldn't we be trying a little bit harder?
Right.
Uh,
Right.
so and type isn't all about this, but it's about human development, and type is related. They tell these stories through type. Um, but that's one of the things about Star Trek that is always just totally
Yeah. Okay. So that and you said so something you said just now. I think this is a good thing to bring up. The type is about development. Oftentimes when I teach the Myers Briggs, when I lead a team through the MBTI and we do all of the exercises and um, the integration doesn't oftentimes get past here's who I am, right? And I often I really want the groups that I work with to say, yeah, it's about you and it's about choices, knowing what you are. This is, not to throw Strengths Finder under the bus. Strengths Finder is a great tool. It tells you what you're good at, right?
uh,
I don't find that there's a whole lot of room for development with Strengths Finder. I think it's a good tool
right,
and it says, here's what you're good at. Okay, great.
right.
Now what? Right. How do you, to the point of what is humanness, to the point of integrating, when you're working with groups, how do you get them past the, okay, this is about me, isn't that interesting?
Well, so the one of the things I find, and this has been my struggle with Myers Briggs over the last 25 years, is that as we move from Xer to millennial now to Gen Z, the crowds are getting more and more resistant to the binary, to the idea of the this or thatness of the model, because I'm both, or it depends, or I and the and the thing is that the model is all about development. The first step is, okay, so where do you land? How the switch that you held up just a minute ago. So in what order are those in? And
Hmm.
you default just like you do for eyes and handedness and your dominant foot. You start somewhere, um, but the point is not that. The point is that over the arc of your life, you're on the hook for all of it. Um, you need thinking and feeling. You're cooked without them. Sensing and intuition. You need to be able um, to eat that Skittle, to put your hands on that thing, to know where the door jamb is so you don't hit it on the way out. But you also need to have some idea of what's going to happen once you walk out that door. What the and only intuition can tell you that. Uh,
Yes.
and that's the and so you're on the hook for all of it, even though you default to one or the other. And so in the end, I need to find the place where I'm standing, and from the security of this place, develop the other tools I need to fully live my life. And so the once people can actually stop fighting the binary idea and actually see that no, this is about all of it, and you got all
Mm,
of it, and the idea is how do you acknowledge it, not only learn to accept it, but actually integrate it, to like it, to need it. That's the key. And I find more people want to know that. So when people talk about changing, well, I used to be this, but now I'm that. And I don't want to have the debate. Type theory says no, your type doesn't change, but you're changing all the time. You're developing all the time. I used to not even see this, and now I do. I used to not like it, and now I tolerate it. I used to just tolerate it. Now I actually realize I need it. Um, that's changing. Your wiring's the same, but your abilities are far more integrated at 60 than they were at 40, and more at 40 than they were at 20, hopefully. I mean, that's the goal. But so I find that people like that idea, because if they have the full type development idea, it's about everything. And it's about the path in front of you and how you can arc towards development more quickly. That's so much more interesting than 4 letters, a label that goes on Facebook. Um,
I think that is a great place to end, unless if you don't mind saying, where can people go to find out a little bit more about OKA, find out about your workshops?
And so come see us. It's okay. Online.com is our website, and we have lots of work on type and emotional intelligence, and drive a whole bunch of different things that we do. We have You can also connect with me on LinkedIn, Hile Rutledge on LinkedIn. I would like to. Where I'm always doing updates, and we have communities of practice where we talk about tools and their integration. So I'd love to connect with you there.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks for that, Hyle. And thanks everybody for dialing in. I'll go ahead and stop the recording. And Hyle, thanks again. This has been awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, I hope those weren't too windy, the answers, I really liked it. And so I appreciate the invite. It gave me a great excuse to go back in and jump into these.
Me too.